So telling us why radical unschooling works for her, please welcome Kim Constable. Now, like I say, we've heard the whole thing about homeschooling and Nadia does it and we hear about how well that's been going. This is taking the concept to a whole different level, really, giving children complete control. There will be mums and dads up and down the country throwing their arms in the air, horror at this idea. Tell me how it works for you.
Well, basically our children just live a life of complete and utter freedom. We live by principles, we always say, rather than living by rules. It's a very traditional, sorry, it's not a traditional, it flips traditional parenting on its head, rather than how I was raised and how probably all of us were raised, which is a very kind of authoritarian way. I'm the parent, you're the child, you do as I say.
Yeah.
We don't live that way. We say, well, we live as partners. So my children I see as my friends. I treat them like I would my friends or like I would my husband. And we live in complete and utter partnership with them. They have freedom to say yes and they have freedom to say no to anything that I suggest or anything that I want them to do. They have complete autonomy over their own lives.
How old are your kids, first of all?
They're very young. The eldest is 9 and then the second is 8 and then the 2 youngest ones are 5 and 3.
I know friends who have got children who are just coming into their teens and they've had a very friendly, should we say, relationship with their kids, and they've tried to treat their kids as friends. It all falls to pieces once they become a teenager, and they can't assert themselves now because the boundary is blurred. Are you worried about that happening with you?
You know, I don't know. It's hard to think about what's going to happen in a few years when they're teenagers. Obviously, children go through a very strong period of growth in that, you know, obviously whenever they're younger, they're geared for communication, and that's why they ask loads of questions and they're so exuberant and excitable. But then once they hit puberty, there's something in the brain changes and that communication moves from the frontal cortex to the back, and then they become much more insular, which is why we think about grumpy teenagers. Yeah. So I'm not sure how I will react whenever that happens. I'm not sure how I'll deal with whatever comes up. But one thing that I do know is that we have a very strong bond of communication with my kids. I mean, my eldest is only 9, but he is just the most phenomenal child. I mean, they all are, but because he's the oldest, he's kind of my benchmark. And he thinks very deeply about things, and he's very self-aware. And he'll come up and he'll say, "Mommy, I don't know if everybody thinks this way, but you know, sometimes, you know, this happens to me or that happens to me, or I feel this way about a situation or that way." And I'm sure all kids do this. I'm sure mine aren't unique. We all think our own kids are fantastic.